Marry me tonight, and walk away in 90 days like it never meant anything. The rain hits hard against the glass, streaking the city lights into blurred lines of gold and white, turning Manhattan into something distant, almost unreal, and Emma Collins stands under the flickering awning of a closed convenience store, her thin jacket soaked through, her fingers numb as she clutches a worn sketchbook tight against her chest like it's the only thing anchoring her to this moment, to herself, to the version of her that still believes tomorrow could be different, because an hour ago she still had a room, a place with cracked walls and a broken heater, but a place nonetheless, and now she has nothing, just a duffel bag at her feet and the echo of her landlord's voice telling her to be out by sunset, no exceptions, no excuses, not this time, and she had nodded, because what else do you do when you run out of chances, when the world stops negotiating, when survival becomes a quiet, humiliating calculation of what you can carry and what you have to leave behind, and that's when the black car pulls up, smooth and silent, too expensive for this part of the city, the kind of car people don't notice because it doesn't belong here, because it belongs somewhere high above, somewhere warm, somewhere she's never been, and the door opens, not hurried, not uncertain, just deliberate, and a man steps out in a tailored coat that doesn't even seem to register the rain, tall, composed, every movement controlled like he's used to rooms bending around him, like he's never had to ask twice for anything in his life, and his eyes find her immediately, not curious, not sympathetic, just assessing, as if she's a problem he's already decided how to solve, and Emma straightens instinctively, pulling her sketchbook closer, her heart picking up in a way she doesn't understand, because men like him don't stop in places like this, not for girls like her, not without a reason, and when he speaks, his voice is calm, measured, cutting clean through the sound of the rain like it belongs in boardrooms, not on empty sidewalks. I need a wife tonight, he says, like it's a business proposal, like it's a number on a page, like it's something that can be signed and filed away, and Emma blinks, certain she heard him wrong, but he steps closer, just enough for the streetlight to catch his face, sharp lines, controlled expression, the kind of man who doesn't joke, doesn't hesitate, doesn't explain more than he has to, and he studies her for half a second longer before adding, name your price, and something about the way he says it, not arrogant, not mocking, just factual, like he already knows. She needs something, like he's already calculated her desperation down to the last dollar, makes her chest tighten, because he's not entirely wrong, and she hates that he can see it, hates that it's written all over her soaked clothes and trembling hands, hates that part of her is already wondering what 90 days of pretending could buy, a room, stability, maybe even time to breathe, and she swallows, her voice barely steady as she asks, "You don't even know me," and for the first time. There's the faintest shift in his expression, not warmth, not quite, but something close to interest, like she just said something he didn't expect, something that doesn't fit the version of her he already built in his mind, and he answers simply, I don't need to, and the rain keeps falling, the city keeps moving somewhere far beyond this moment, but right here, under this flickering light, Emma feels it, the edge of a decision that could change everything, or break whatever is left of her life, and her fingers tighten around the sketchbook, the last piece of who she is, as she looks at a stranger offering her a future that doesn't feel real, and wonders if saying yes would be the biggest mistake she'll ever make, or the one thing that finally changes her story. Emma does not answer right away, not because she does not understand the offer, but because she understands it too clearly, because 90 days is not just time, it is survival, it is rent paid, food on a table, a chance to stand still long enough to figure out what comes next, and yet everything about him feels like a contract she cannot read fully, like a door that opens into something she cannot control, and she has spent too long trying to hold on to whatever little control she has left, so she studies him instead, the way his coat falls perfectly against his frame despite the rain, the way he does not fidget or rush or second-guess himself, the way he looks at her like this is already decided, like she is the last piece of a plan that has been in motion long before he stepped out of that car, and it unsettles her more than the cold ever could. Why me? She finally asks, her voice quieter now, steadier, because if she is going to step into something this strange, she needs at least one honest answer, and for a brief moment he considers her, not dismissively, not impatiently, but like the question matters more than he expected, like it complicates something simple, because you have nothing tying you down, he says, and the words land harder than the rain, not cruel, just precise, like he is stating a fact, like he has already read her situation from the outside in, and Emma feels that familiar sting, the one that comes from being seen only in terms of what you lack, but he is not finished, and because you look like someone who would keep her word, and that, more than anything, makes her pause, because no one has said something like that to her in a long time, not since life started stripping things away one by one, not since survival replaced identity, and for a second she forgets the cold, forgets the street, forgets everything except the quiet weight of that statement, and she exhales. Slowly, her breath visible in the air as she shifts the sketchbook under her arm. What exactly does this involve? She asks, and now his answer comes faster, cleaner, like this part he has rehearsed. You will stay with me, attend events, present yourself as my wife in public, no personal questions, no interference in my work, and after 90 days, we go our separate ways, he says, and there it is again, that structure, that control, everything outlined in a way that leaves no room for interpretation, no room for emotion, just roles and timelines and expectations, and Emma nods slightly, her mind already racing through what that means, the clothes she does not have, the world she has never stepped into, the people who would see right through her in seconds. And what do I get? She asks, because if this is a transaction, she needs to treat it like one, needs to protect herself the only way she knows how, and his answer does not hesitate, an apartment, all expenses covered, and enough money to start over when it ends, and just like that, the number hangs between them, unspoken but understood, larger than anything she has ever had, larger than anything she ever imagined someone would offer her for simply existing in a role, and her grip tightens on the sketchbook again, because that is the one thing not part of his offer, the one thing that is still hers, the one thing that reminds her she is more than a problem to solve, and she looks down at it for a second, at the worn edges, the pages filled with sketches of strangers and city corners and quiet moments no one else notices. And she realizes something that both terrifies and steadies her at the same time. She has already lost everything else, so maybe the only thing left to risk is herself, and when she looks back up at him, her eyes are different now, not hopeful, not trusting, but resolved. 90 days, she repeats softly, as if testing the weight of it, and he nods once, confident, certain, already moving forward in his mind, and Emma takes a breath that feels deeper than any she has taken all night. Then we do it, she says, and for the first time, something shifts in his expression, not surprise, not relief, but recognition, like the plan has just locked into place exactly as intended, and he steps aside, gesturing toward the open car door. We leave now, he says, and Emma hesitates only a second longer before picking up her bag, clutching her sketchbook close, and stepping out of the rain and into a life that does not feel like hers, not yet, not even close. The car door closes with a soft, final click that feels louder than it should, like something in Emma's old life just sealed itself shut behind her, and for a moment she just sits there, unsure where to place her hands, her eyes drifting over the interior that smells faintly of leather and something clean and expensive, the kind of scent that does not belong to late nights and second chances but to decisions made long before consequences ever show up. And across from her, Alexander Hayes does not look at her again, not immediately. He simply taps once on the glass partition and the driver pulls away smoothly, like this was always the next step, like there was never any doubt, and the city outside begins to move, wet pavement reflecting streetlights in long, shimmering streaks as they glide past buildings she has only ever seen from the outside, places where people walk in with purpose, with money, with a sense of belonging she has never quite felt, and she presses her sketchbook closer against her chest again, grounding herself in something familiar, something real, because everything else feels like it is slipping into a version of life she does not recognize. We will go over the details now, Alexander says after a moment, his voice steady, professional, like this is just another meeting, another agreement. And he reaches into his coat, pulling out a thin folder, crisp, untouched by the rain, placing it on the seat between them, and Emma hesitates before opening it, her fingers brushing against the smooth paper, the printed words already waiting for her signature, her agreement, her compliance, and she scans the lines quickly, her eyes catching phrases that feel too heavy to belong to her: confidentiality, public representation, duration fixed at 90 days, no emotional involvement, and she almost lets out a small, disbelieving breath at that last one, because it sounds so simple when written down, like feelings are something you can schedule, avoid, cancel at will, and she glances up at him. You really think people can just follow that? She asks quietly, and for the first time since she entered the car, he looks directly at her, his gaze calm, unwavering. I do, he says, not arrogantly, not defensively, just certain, like it has worked before, like control is something he has Mastered in every area of his life, including this, and Emma nods slowly, not because she agrees, but because she understands that for him, this is not a risk, it is a solution, and she lowers her eyes back to the page, her fingers lingering near the bottom where her name would go, Emma Collins, written in ink that would tie her to him in a way she has never imagined, even temporarily, and she feels that flicker of hesitation again, that small voice asking if she is trading too much for something that only lasts 90 days, but then she thinks of the sidewalk, the rain, the empty space where her life used to be, and she picks up the pen. Her hand steady despite everything, and signs, the ink flowing smoothly, sealing something she cannot take back, and when she hands it back to him, he does not smile, does not react in any visible way, he simply closes the folder with a soft, decisive motion, then it is done, he says, and something about those words settles heavily in the space between them, final, undeniable, and Emma leans back slightly, her shoulders brushing against the soft leather, her mind racing through what comes next. What she is supposed to be now, how she is supposed to exist in a world that runs on rules she has never learned, and as if reading that uncertainty, Alexander speaks again, you will have everything you need, he says, and this time there is a slight pause before he adds, except questions, and Emma almost smiles at that, not because it is funny, but because it confirms what she already knows, that this arrangement is built on silence just as much as it is built on structure, and outside. The car slows, turning into a private driveway that rises away from the street, leading toward a building that seems to disappear into the night sky, glass and steel and quiet power, and Emma's breath catches just slightly as they come to a stop, the kind of place she has only ever seen in magazines or passing glimpses on screens, and when the driver steps out to open the door, the city noise fades, replaced by something softer, more controlled, like even the air here follows different rules. And Alexander steps out first, adjusting his coat. Without looking back, then pauses just long enough to say, welcome to your new life, and Emma steps out after him, her shoes touching dry ground for the first time in hours, her sketchbook still pressed firmly against her side, the only piece of her old world she has carried into this one, and as the doors slide open and the warm light spills out to meet them, she realizes that for the next 90 days, everything about her life is about to be rewritten, whether she is ready for it or not. The lobby is quiet in a way Emma has never experienced before, not silent, but controlled, like every sound has been carefully chosen, the soft hum of hidden air systems, the muted echo of polished shoes against marble floors, the low murmur of a distant conversation that never quite reaches them, and she steps inside slowly, almost cautiously, her damp shoes leaving faint marks that disappear almost instantly under the warm, spotless surface, and for a brief second she feels like she should apologize for being here, like she does not belong in a place where everything looks untouched, expensive, deliberate, but Alexander does not slow down, does not look back, he moves forward with the kind of certainty that makes space for him automatically, and people notice, of course they do, the concierge straightens, the staff nods subtly, eyes flicking toward Emma with quick, assessing glances before returning to neutral, professional expressions, and she feels it, that shift, that awareness of being seen, measured, placed into a category she has not yet learned how to navigate, and she instinctively pulls her jacket tighter around herself, suddenly aware of every detail that sets her apart, every thread that does not match the world she just stepped into. But then Alexander speaks again, his voice low, steady. Tomorrow, everything changes, he says, as if he is outlining a schedule, not a life, and she glances at him, trying to read something more in his expression, something human beneath the structure, but there is nothing obvious, just focus, just intention, and the elevator doors slide open before they even reach them, as if the building itself is anticipating his arrival, and they step inside, the doors closing softly behind them, sealing off the outside world completely, and Emma exhales slowly, her reflection staring back at her in the mirrored walls, her hair still slightly damp, her clothes out of place against the sleek surroundings, her sketchbook pressed tightly under her arm like a secret she refuses to let go of, and as the elevator rises, the numbers climbing steadily, she feels the distance growing, not just in floors, but in reality, in identity, in everything she thought her life would look like even a few hours ago, and when the doors open again, it is into a space that feels less like an apartment and more like something designed to impress, wide open. Windows stretching across the entire wall, revealing the city below like a living map of light and motion, furniture arranged with precision, nothing out of place, nothing unnecessary, and Emma steps forward slowly, her eyes taking it all in, the quiet luxury, the absence of clutter, the way everything seems to exist without effort, and for a moment she forgets to breathe, because this is not just different, it is a completely separate world. And behind her, Alexander sets his keys down on a sleek surface, the sound soft but final. "This is where you will stay," he says, and she turns to him, her voice barely above a whisper, "This entire place," and he nods once, as if the answer is obvious, as if there is no need to explain further, and she lets out a small breath, almost a laugh, not from amusement but from disbelief, because just hours ago she was standing in the rain with nowhere to go, and now she is standing here, surrounded by glass and light and space that feels too big, too perfect, too temporary, and she walks further inside, her fingers brushing lightly against the edge of a table, grounding herself in something physical, something real, and she places her bag down carefully, almost respectfully, like she is afraid to disturb the balance of the room, and then she sets her sketchbook on the surface beside it, the worn cover contrasting sharply against the pristine surroundings, and for a second, it feels like the only honest thing in the entire space, and Alexander notices it, of course he does, his eyes flicking toward it briefly before returning to her. "That stays with you," he says, not as a question, but as an observation, and Emma nods, her hand resting lightly on it. "It is the only thing that does," she replies, and there is a brief pause, a small shift in the air that neither of them fully acknowledges, before he turns away slightly, already moving on, already thinking ahead. "You will have a team in the morning," he says, "wardrobe, etiquette, media training, everything necessary," and Emma blinks, the words coming too quickly, too efficiently, like pieces being assembled into a version of her that does not exist yet, and she looks at him again, searching for something real in all of this, something unscripted. "And what if I mess it up?" she asks quietly, and for a moment, just a fraction of a second, there is something different in his expression, something less controlled, less certain, before it disappears, replaced again by that calm precision. "Then you learn quickly," he says, and Emma nods slowly, because that is the only option she has ever had, and as she stands there, in a place that feels both like an opportunity and a test, she realizes that this is not just about pretending to be someone else, it is about surviving in a world that expects her to become that person completely, even if she does not yet know how. Emma barely sleeps that night, not because the bed is uncomfortable, but because it is the exact opposite, too soft, too perfect, like something designed for someone else, someone who belongs here, and she lies there staring at the ceiling for hours, listening to the quiet hum of a city that never really rests, wondering how a single decision could shift everything so completely. And when morning comes, it does not arrive slowly, it arrives all at once, with a gentle knock at the door and a voice she does not recognize calling her name like it has always belonged in this space. "Ms. Collins, your team has arrived," and for a second she forgets where she is, her mind reaching for the memory of a small room, a narrow bed, the familiar discomfort of a life she understood, but then she sits up, the sunlight pouring through the massive windows, the city stretching endlessly beyond, and reality settles in again, steady and unavoidable. And when she opens the door, she is met by three people who look like they stepped out of a magazine, polished, composed, carrying garment bags, cases, tablets, each one focused with quiet efficiency, and they greet her warmly, professionally, as if she is already who she is supposed to become, as if there is nothing unusual about any of this, and before she can fully process it, they are inside, moving through the space with purpose, laying out clothes, discussing tones and styles, measuring her without hesitation, and Emma stands there for a moment, overwhelmed, her instinct telling her to step back, to apologize, to explain that there has been some kind of mistake, that she is not the person they think she is, but no one pauses, no one questions it, and slowly, she realizes that in this world, identity is not something you argue, it is something you present, and she is expected to present it perfectly, and as the morning unfolds, she is guided through each step, fabrics draped over her shoulders, colors held up against her skin, voices discussing what works, what does not, what will translate well in photographs, in interviews, in rooms filled with people who will be watching her closely, and at some point, she catches her reflection again, not in the quiet mirror of an elevator, but in a full-length glass panel, and for a moment she does not recognize the woman looking back, her posture straighter, her hair styled, her clothes fitting in a way that feels unfamiliar but undeniably different, and she tilts her head slightly, studying that version of herself, wondering if this is what 90 days is supposed to do, not just change where she lives, but reshape how she exists entirely. And behind her, one of the stylists smiles gently. "You see it, do not you?" she says, and Emma hesitates before answering. "I see someone else," and the stylist nods, not correcting her, not disagreeing, just acknowledging it like part of the process. And later, as the room quiets and the team begins to pack up, leaving behind carefully arranged outfits and notes for the next steps, Emma finds herself alone again, standing in the middle of a space that now feels slightly less foreign, slightly more hers, and she reaches for her sketchbook. Instinctively, flipping it open to a blank page, her fingers steady as she begins to draw, quick lines, soft shading, capturing what she sees not in the room, but in herself, the uncertainty, the shift, the fragile line between who she was and who she is expected to be, and she is so focused that she does not hear the door open behind her, does not notice Alexander step inside until his voice breaks the silence, calm but curious. "You draw every time you are trying to understand something," he says, and she pauses, her pencil hovering mid-air before she looks up at him, surprised. "I did not realize you were watching," she replies, and he steps closer, his gaze briefly flicking to the page, taking in the sketch without commenting on it directly. "I notice patterns," he says simply, and there is something in the way he says it that makes her wonder if she is just another pattern to him, another situation to analyze and control. But then he looks at her again, just for a second longer than necessary, and adds, "You adapt quickly," and Emma closes the sketchbook gently, her hand resting on it as she meets his gaze. "I have had to," she says, and for the first time, the space between them feels slightly different, not just structured, not just transactional, but touched by something quieter, something neither of them has defined yet. And as the day moves forward, Emma realizes that surviving these 90 days is not just about playing a role. It is about learning how to exist in a world that expects her to become someone entirely new, while holding on to the part of herself that refuses to disappear. By the third day, Emma begins to understand that this life does not slow down for anyone, not even someone still learning how to breathe inside it, and it starts early, earlier than she is used to, with a schedule already laid out for her before she even finishes her first cup of coffee, meetings she does not attend but must prepare for, names she must remember, faces she must recognize, and rules that are never fully spoken but always expected. And Alexander moves through it all with the same calm precision, never rushing, never explaining more than necessary, but always present, always aware. And Emma watches him closely, not out of curiosity alone, but because she needs to learn, because every movement he makes feels intentional, every pause calculated, every word measured, and it is during one of those moments, standing beside him in a private conference room high above the city, that she realizes something unexpected. People listen to him, not just because of his position, but because he makes them feel like he already knows the outcome before the conversation even begins. And when the meeting ends, the room clears quickly, leaving only the two of them and the quiet echo of decisions just made, and Emma lets out a small breath she did not realize she was holding. "You do not leave space for mistakes," she says, her voice thoughtful, and Alexander glances at her briefly. "Mistakes cost time," he replies, as if that explains everything, and she tilts her head slightly, considering that sometimes they show you something you were not looking for, she says, and for a moment, he does not respond, his expression shifting just enough to suggest that her words landed somewhere unexpected, before he turns away slightly, already moving forward again. "We do not have time for that," he says, but the certainty in his voice feels just a fraction less absolute than before. And later that evening, they attend their first public event together, a formal gathering filled with people who carry themselves with the same polished confidence. Conversations flowing easily, laughter controlled, everything existing within an unspoken framework of status and expectation. And Emma feels it immediately, the weight of being observed, the subtle glances, the quiet assessments, the curiosity about who she is and how she fits into Alexander's world, and she remembers everything she has been taught over the past 2 days, how to stand, how to speak, how to hold eye contact without appearing uncertain, and she steps into it carefully, matching the rhythm of the room, adapting in real time. And when someone approaches them, a woman with a smile that feels both warm and calculated, Emma does not step back, does not hesitate. She introduces herself clearly, confidently, her voice steady, her posture aligned with everything she has practiced, and Alexander notices, of course he does, the way she holds her ground, the way she navigates a conversation that could have easily exposed her, and there is a brief moment where his attention lingers on her, not evaluating, not correcting, but observing in a way that feels different from before, and as the evening continues, Emma finds herself moving more naturally, responding without overthinking, adapting without fear, and at one point, when the conversation shifts unexpectedly toward a sensitive topic involving the company, she speaks carefully, choosing her words with a clarity that redirects the discussion without creating tension, and it works. The moment passes smoothly, the conversation shifts, and the people around them move on, unaware of how close it came to becoming something else, and when they are finally alone again, stepping away from the crowd, the city lights stretching out below them through the glass, Alexander turns to her, his expression thoughtful, quieter than usual. "You handled that well," he says, and Emma lets out a small breath, the tension leaving her shoulders slowly. "I was not sure I would," she admits, and he studies her for a second longer before responding, "You were," and something about the way he says it, simple, direct, without embellishment, makes it feel more meaningful than any praise she has received in days, and she looks out at the city again, her reflection faintly visible in the glass, no longer entirely unfamiliar, no longer entirely the same, and for the first time since she stepped into this world, she realizes that she is not just surviving it, she is beginning to exist within it, even if she still does not know what that will cost her in the end. The next morning arrives with a different kind of weight, not rushed, not overwhelming, but heavy in a way Emma cannot quite name, as if something beneath the surface has begun to shift, and she feels it the moment she steps into the living room and finds Alexander already there, standing near the window with his phone in hand, his posture tighter than usual, his expression more guarded, and he does not greet her right away, which is unusual in itself, because even his silence usually carries intention, but this time it feels like interruption, like something has broken the rhythm he carefully maintains, and when he finally speaks, his voice is lower, more controlled than calm. "There will be a press briefing this afternoon," he says, not turning to face her immediately, and Emma pauses, sensing the difference before she even understands it. "About what?" she asks. And now he looks at her, his gaze sharper, more focused. "About us," he replies, and the words land with a quiet finality that makes her chest tighten, because until now, everything has existed within controlled environments, curated spaces, rooms where people observe but do not question too deeply. But the press is different. The press asks, the press digs, the press does not accept polished surfaces without trying to break through them. And Emma takes a slow breath, steadying herself, and "What exactly are they going to ask?" she says, and Alexander steps closer, placing his phone down with a precision that feels deliberate. "Everything," he answers, and there is no hesitation in his tone, no attempt to soften it, just truth, direct and unavoidable, and Emma nods slowly, because that is what she expected, what she has been preparing for. And yet something about the way he says it makes her realize that this is not just another step in the plan, this is a test, one that could either solidify everything or expose the cracks they have been carefully hiding, and she glances toward her sketchbook resting on the table, the familiar object grounding her for just a second before she looks back at him. "Then we answer carefully," she says, and for a brief moment, there is a flicker of something in his eyes, something that almost resembles approval, but it disappears as quickly as it appears, replaced again by that controlled focus. "You answer what is necessary," he corrects, and Emma raises an eyebrow slightly. "And what happens when what is necessary is not enough?" she asks, and this time, he does not respond immediately, his gaze holding hers just long enough to suggest that the question matters more than he wants it to, before he turns away, breaking the moment. "We will not let it get to that point," he says, but the certainty in his voice does not fully match the tension in the room, and hours later, as they stand side by side in front of a room filled with cameras, microphones, and reporters waiting with practiced patience, Emma feels the shift completely, the difference between controlled observation and direct scrutiny, the way every movement is captured, every pause analyzed, every word weighed before it even leaves her mouth, and Alexander steps forward first, delivering his statement with the same precision he uses in every room, outlining their relationship in clear, composed terms, offering just enough information to satisfy without inviting further questions. But of course, the questions come anyway, one after another, each one pushing slightly further, probing for inconsistencies, for hesitation, for anything that does not align, and Emma listens closely, matching his rhythm, preparing herself to step in when needed, and then it happens. A reporter in the front row leans forward, his voice cutting through the room with a directness that feels almost surgical. "Ms. Collins, can you tell us how you met Mr. Hayes?" And the room quiets just enough to make the moment stretch, and Emma feels it, the weight of expectation, the risk of saying too much or not enough, the delicate balance between truth and performance, and she takes a breath, her mind moving quickly, aligning everything she has learned with everything she feels, and then she answers, her voice steady, her expression calm. Sometimes the right person shows up when you have nothing left to lose, she says, and for a second, there is silence, not confusion, not skepticism, but something else, something that lingers, something that resonates just enough to shift the tone of the room. And she does not look at Alexander immediately, but she can feel it, the way his attention sharpens, the way her words land differently than expected, and as the questions continue, the moment passes, the structure returns, but something has changed, something small but undeniable. And when they finally step away from the crowd, back into a quieter space where the noise fades and the tension settles, Alexander turns to her, his expression unreadable for a brief second before he speaks. That was not part of the plan, he says, and Emma meets his gaze without hesitation. Neither was I, she replies, and for the first time since this began, the silence between them does not feel controlled, it feels real, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. The silence between them does not last long, not because it resolves, but because it is interrupted, and this time it is not controlled, not scheduled, not part of any plan. It comes in the form of a notification, sharp and immediate, breaking through the stillness of the room as Alexander's phone vibrates against the glass table, and he glances at it once, just once, but Emma sees it, the shift, subtle but undeniable, the tightening in his jaw, the slight pause before he picks it up, and whatever he reads does not belong to the carefully structured world he has built, because for the first time since she has known him, there is hesitation, not visible to anyone who does not look closely, but Emma has been watching him long enough now to recognize when something does not fit, and when he finally speaks, his voice is controlled, but the edge beneath it is new. We need to go, he says, and there is no explanation, no elaboration, just movement, immediate and decisive, and Emma does not question it. She follows, because she can feel it too now, the shift, the sense that something has moved beyond their control, and the drive back feels different from the first time, quieter, heavier, the city outside no longer distant and unreal but sharp, immediate, pressing in on them from all sides, and when they arrive, the lobby is no longer just a space of quiet efficiency, it is alive with something else, whispers, glances that linger too long, conversations that stop the moment they enter, and Emma feels it before she even understands it, the way attention sharpens, the way people look not just at Alexander, but at her, differently now, and as they step into the elevator, the doors closing behind them, sealing them into a smaller, more confined silence, she finally speaks. What happened? She asks, her voice calm but steady, and Alexander does not answer immediately, his eyes fixed ahead, his posture rigid in a way she has not seen before, and when he finally responds, the words are precise, but the meaning behind them carries weight. Someone released information, he says, and Emma's chest tightens slightly, because she already knows what kind of information would cause this reaction, what kind of truth would disrupt everything they have built, and she looks at him carefully. About us, she says, and he nods once, confirming it without needing to explain further, and the elevator continues its steady rise, but the space inside feels smaller now, more fragile, like everything they have constructed is suddenly exposed, and when the doors open, the apartment no longer feels like a controlled environment. It feels like a place waiting for something to break, and Alexander moves quickly, his phone already in his hand, his voice low as he speaks to someone on the other end, giving instructions, asking questions, his tone sharp but contained, and Emma stands still for a moment, processing it, the reality of what this means, because this was always a possibility, always a risk written between the lines of a contract that pretended emotions did not exist, and she walks slowly toward the table, her eyes falling on her sketchbook, still resting where she left it, untouched, constant, and she picks it up instinctively, flipping it open, her fingers tracing the line she drew earlier, the image of a man standing alone despite everything around him, and she exhales quietly, because now she understands something she did not fully see before. This was never just about pretending, it was about exposure, about what happens when the truth does not stay contained, and behind her, Alexander ends the call, the room falling into silence again, but this time it is different, heavier, more real, and when she turns to face him, his expression is no longer just controlled, it is conflicted, something breaking through the surface he has maintained since the beginning, and he looks at her not as part of a plan, not as a solution, but as someone standing inside the consequences with him. They are calling it a contract marriage, he says, and the words hang in the air, simple but devastating in their clarity, because once something is named, it becomes real in a way that cannot be undone. And Emma nods slowly, her grip tightening slightly on the sketchbook, because that is what it is, she replies, not harsh, not defensive, just honest, and for a moment, neither of them moves. Neither of them speaks, because there is nothing left to hide behind, no structure strong enough to hold back what is coming next, and then Alexander steps closer, his voice quieter now, less certain. It was supposed to stay private, he says, and Emma meets his gaze, steady despite everything. Nothing like this ever does, she answers, and the truth of it settles between them, undeniable, unavoidable, and outside. Somewhere beyond the glass walls and controlled spaces, the world has already begun to react, already begun to shape a story that neither of them fully owns anymore, and standing there, in the middle of everything they tried to control, Emma realizes that the next step will not be about following the plan, it will be about choosing what matters when the plan no longer holds. The room feels smaller than it ever has before, not because the walls have moved, but because the truth now fills every inch of it, pressing in, leaving no space for pretense, and Emma stands there with her sketchbook in her hands, the weight of it suddenly heavier than before, because it no longer feels like just a piece of her past, it feels like the only thing that has remained honest in a situation built on controlled illusions, and Alexander watches her, not as a strategist calculating outcomes, but as a man standing at the edge of something he can no longer fully manage, and for a long moment, neither of them speaks, because there is nothing left to carefully construct, nothing left to soften, only what is real and what they choose to do with it, and Emma breaks the silence first, her voice calm but steady. You can fix this, she says, not as a question, but as a recognition of who he is, what he does, the power he holds, and he exhales slowly, running a hand through his hair in a way she has never seen before, less controlled, more human. I can control the narrative, he replies, and there is a pause before he adds, quieter, but I cannot control what it becomes, and that is the first time he has admitted uncertainty, not just to her, but to himself, and Emma nods slightly, because she understands the difference, the space between influence and truth, and she takes a step closer, not hesitant, not afraid, just present. Then maybe you should stop trying to control it, she says, and the words land in a way that shifts something between them, something deeper than any contract, any agreement, any carefully planned outcome, and he looks at her, really looks at her, not as a role, not as a solution, but as the person who has been standing beside him through all of this, adapting, challenging, existing in a way that does not fit into the structure he built, and for the first time, he does not immediately respond, because there is no calculated answer for something like that, and the silence stretches, not uncomfortable, but real, and then he moves, not away, not toward a phone or a plan, but toward her, closing the distance in a way that feels intentional but unguarded, and his voice, when he speaks, is quieter than she has ever heard it. If I stop controlling it, I lose everything, he says. And Emma holds his gaze, her grip on the sketchbook loosening slightly as she considers his words. Or you finally choose what matters, she replies, and there is no hesitation in her tone, no doubt, just clarity, and something in him shifts again, deeper this time, breaking through layers that have been in place for years, and he looks away for a second, out toward the city that has always been his domain, his structure, his certainty, and then back at her, and the decision is there, not spoken yet, but forming, undeniable. And the next morning, the world is already waiting, headlines circulating, opinions forming, narratives taking shape, but this time, when Alexander stands in front of the cameras, he does not follow the script that has been prepared, he does not deliver the controlled statement designed to redirect attention. Instead, he pauses, just long enough for the room to quiet, for the expectation to build, and then he speaks, his voice steady, but different, stripped of the distance he usually maintains. Yes, it started as an arrangement, he says, and there is a ripple through the room, a shift in energy, but he does not stop. But what people are calling a contract is not the whole truth, and Emma stands just behind him, her heart steady, her expression calm, not because she knows what he will say next, but because for the first time, it is not something he planned, it is something he is choosing, and he turns slightly, just enough for his gaze to meet hers for a brief second before returning to the room. I asked